The backstage of the Grand Palais in Paris was a controlled hurricane of silk, sequins, and screaming assistants. Mannequins in half-finished gowns stood like silent sentinels. Makeup artists dabbed at models' faces with frantic precision. The air was thick with the scent of hairspray, expensive perfume, and the electric crackle of creativity about to be unleashed. This was Paris Fashion Week, the pinnacle of the fashion world, and I, Valentina St. Clair, the creative director and heir to the St. Clair Fashion Dynasty, was about to unveil my autumn/winter collection. It was the culmination of 18 months of sleepless nights, obsessive sketching, and bitter negotiations with suppliers who thought they could fleece a young woman. I had poured my soul into this collection. Every stitch, every bead, every drape of fabric was a piece of my heart. My husband, Julian St. Clair, was supposed to be in the front row. He was the CEO of the company, the man who handled the business side while I handled the art. That we were the perfect team. Or so I had believed. My sister, Penelope, was also in the front row. She was my confidant, my best friend, the only person in the world I trusted completely. She had been with me through every trial, every triumph, every tear. She was my rock. The show was spectacular. The audience gasped at the opening look, a cascade of midnight blue silk that seemed to flow like water. They applauded the tailoring, the innovation, the audacity. The critics were scribbling furiously. The influencers were already posting, "IT was a triumph. IT was my triumph." But then Julian stood up. He walked to the stage, his steps measured and deliberate. He took the microphone from the announcer. The music faded. The lights shifted to a cold, harsh white. "I have an announcement," Julian said, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. "A confession, really. The woman who just presented this collection is not the genius behind it. She is a plagiarist, a thief. She has been stealing designs from my true partner, the woman I truly love, for years, and tonight, the truth finally comes out." My heart stopped. My blood turned to ice. I watched as Penelope rose from her seat. She walked to the stage, her movements graceful, rehearsed. She was wearing a gown that I had designed, one of my own creations, but she wore it like she owned it, like she owned everything. Julian took her hand. "Penelope Hart is the real designer," he declared. "She's been the ghost behind St. Clair for a decade. She created the signature styles, the iconic silhouettes, the revolutionary fabrics. Valentina merely took credit. She threatened Penelope into silence. She manipulated the board. She forged documents. But tonight, the truth is free. Penelope and I are partners that I end business. And in life, we're getting married. And we're taking over St. Clair." The audience erupted. Cameras flashed. Whispers swelled into a roar. I stood at the center of the stage, my gown, the emerald masterpiece I had stayed up 3 nights to finish, suddenly feeling like a shroud. Penelope smiled at me. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated triumph. "I'm sorry, Valentina," she said, her voice honeyed and cruel. "I never wanted to hurt you, but the truth had to come out. You're not a designer. You're a fraud, and the world deserves to know." I looked at Julian, the man I had married, the man I had trusted, the man I had given everything to. He was holding Penelope's hand, his eyes cold, his expression dismissive. "You," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "are a monster." Julian laughed. "I'm a businessman, Valentina, and you were a liability. Goodbye." I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I simply walked off the stage. The cameras followed me. The catwalk felt like a mile of broken glass. I walked out of the Grand Palais into the cold Paris rain, and I disappeared. The months that followed were a nightmare. The media destroyed me. The fashion fraud, Valentina the imposter, the sister who stole everything. My reputation was in tatters. My contracts were cancelled. My friends abandoned me. My mother, the matriarch of the St. Clair family, disowned me. She had always favored Penelope. She had always seen me as the lesser daughter. And now she had proof. I retreated to a tiny apartment in a forgotten corner of the city. I had no money, no future, no hope that I sold my clothes, my jewelry, my everything. I lived on bread and water. I stared at the walls for days on end. The only thing I had left was my sketchbook and my rage. I thought about all the years I had given to Julian, all the designs I had created, all the sleepless nights, all the sacrifices. I thought about Penelope, the sister I had loved, the sister who had betrayed me. I thought about my mother, who had always made it clear that Penelope was the favorite. I thought about the way Julian had held me, promised me forever, then discarded me like trash. One night, I lay on the cold floor of my apartment, staring at the ceiling. The rain was beating against the window. I felt something shift inside me, a warmth, a light, a presence. System initializing. I sat up. My heart was pounding. I looked around. The room was empty, but the voice was clear. Hello, Valentina. I am the Fashionized system. I have been dormant within you since your humiliation. Your grandmother, the real matriarch, activated me before she died. She knew your family would betray you. She knew you would need me. I am the key to your destiny. I can see the future of fashion. I can see the truth in every lie. I can help you reclaim everything. Do you accept? My grandmother, not the woman who had disowned me, and my father's mother, the one who had been a seamstress, a dreamer, a rebel. She had died when I was 16. She had told me on her deathbed, Valentina, my darling, the world will try to break you, but you are made of stronger stuff. Remember, fashion is not just fabric. IT is power, and power belongs to those who seize it. I had forgotten her words that I had let the world break me, but now I had a second chance at a system that could show me the future, that could predict trends before they happened, that could expose every lie Penelope and Julian had told. I accept, I whispered. I accept. Excellent. Your first task, reclaim your name. The documents proving Penelope's forgery are hidden in the family vault. Retrieve them. The system will guide you. Reward, access to future trend predictions. The system was my lifeline. I navigated the treacherous waters of the fashion world. With its guidance, I predicted trends months before they happened. I designed collections that left critics speechless. I built a new brand, a ghost brand, from the shadows that I called it Phoenix, because I was rising from the ashes. I also gathered evidence. The systems showed me the truth. Penelope had never designed a single garment. She had stolen my sketches, my notes, my ideas. She had manipulated Julian into believing she was the genius. She had been planning this for years. She had even been the one to suggest the fake evidence that framed me. I started leaking information to a select group of journalists. Not all at once, just enough to keep the story alive, just enough to make the world question the narrative. The months passed. Julian and Penelope were riding high. They had taken over St. Clair. They were the darlings of the industry. They were planning a wedding that was being billed as the event of the decade, but I was patient. I was methodical. I was building my empire brick by brick. The system gave me an advantage no one else had. That I knew what the next big trend would be before it even existed. That I launched my own line, a ghost line under a pseudonym, and it sold out within hours. I made millions. That I bought back my shares in St. Clair through shell companies. That I was the majority shareholder. They didn't even know. The moment of reckoning came at the final show of Paris Fashion Week. Julian and Penelope were presenting their new collection. It was a collection I had designed 3 years ago, one they had stolen, but I had a surprise for them. I walked into the Grand Palais, the same venue where I had been humiliated. I was wearing a gown that I had designed with the system's help, a masterpiece of light and shadow that seemed to shift and shimmer with every movement. I was surrounded by my new team, my new family, the people who believed in me. The audience gasped when they saw me. Julian's face went white. Penelope's composure shattered. They tried to have me removed, but I had already alerted the press. The cameras were rolling. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room, I am here to reclaim what was stolen from me. The collection you are about to see is not Penelope Hart's work. IT is mine. I have the original sketches, the time-stamped files, the testimonies of the seamstresses who sewed every stitch. I have the proof that Penelope and Julian have been lying to you for years. I pulled out a folder. I held it up to the cameras. And I also have proof that Julian St. Clair has been embezzling funds from the company. That Penelope has been selling our trade secrets to our competitors, that they have been conspiring to destroy St. Clair from the inside. The room erupted. Julian was screaming. Penelope was crying. The security guards were trying to contain them, but the evidence was irrefutable. The FBI had already been notified. They were waiting outside. Julian lunged at me. You bitch. You destroyed everything. I stood my ground. I didn't destroy anything, Julian. You did. You destroyed our marriage. You destroyed my trust. You destroyed your own integrity. This is just the consequence of your actions. He was dragged away. Penelope followed. The cameras captured everything. Julian was convicted of embezzlement and fraud. Penelope was convicted of theft and conspiracy. They both faced long prison sentences. My mother, the matriarch who had disowned me, was exposed as a conspirator. She had known everything. She had helped them. She was also arrested. I took over St. Clair. Did I rebranded it as Phoenix St. Clair? Did I released a new collection that was hailed as a masterpiece? I was on every magazine cover. I was the architect of fashion, the phoenix of the industry. I had rebuilt my empire from the ashes. But the final confrontation came when Julian was led out of the courthouse. He was in handcuffs. His expensive suit was ruined. He looked like a broken man. Valentina, he said, his voice cracked and desperate. Please, did I know I don't deserve forgiveness? I was a fool. I was greedy. Did I was arrogant? But I loved you. Did I end my own twisted way? I loved you. Please, give me another chance. One more chance. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I looked at him, the man who had held me and promised me forever. The man who had stolen my work and humiliated me in front of the world. The man who had laughed at my pain. You never loved me, Julian, I said. You loved what I could do for you. You loved my talent, my ambition, my connections, but you never saw me, and you never will. I don't need your apologies. I don't need your love. I have everything I need, and I have myself, and that's more than enough. I turned and walked away. The future was bright, and it was all mine.